Hey, how you doing? This is Badfish Outdoors bringing you our first ever question and answer period. We took some questions from you online. We're going to answer them as best we could, and hopefully it helps you out a little bit. And I'm going to let Gordy lead it off.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we were pretty happy. We got quite a few responses, and we'll try to answer some of those questions for you. Jim Janik wants to know about the best way to keep a bulldog at a certain depth. Well, first of all, what we do, if you're using just a standard bulldog, whether it's the regular model or the Magnum model or the pounder, it's basically the typical rule of 1 foot per second. So you count it down, first of all, to the depth that you want to fish. Second of all, it depends on how deep you're fishing. If you're fishing really deep water, you've got a couple of options. If you're counting that bulldog down to 20 feet, obviously you're pulling that bait back up. It's going to naturally come back towards the boat. So a couple things that you can do are, well, the most important thing that you do right off the bat is put a downward curve in your bulldog. And what that's going to do is whenever you're pulling up on the line, it's just going to want to keep that bulldog running down. And you make sure that it's straight too, so it's coming in a straight line, so it's not kicking up off to the side. The next thing that you can do is you can add weight. You can always add bell sinkers. I usually start off with like a 1/2 ounce bell sinker. If I want to keep it down, you can add a couple more if you want. And those are the things that I do to keep that bulldog running at a certain depth.
Okay, and next we had a couple questions about doing some roach rolling up here. Okay, one of the questions is what speeds do you normally row at like during the open water months? It's pretty much the same, I would say, spring through fall, because you aren't able to achieve any real high speeds if you're powering the boat with oars. So usually we're running about 1.8 to 2.8, and one of the things, if you're doing that lower number, you also catch a lot of like big walleyes as well, like doing that. And the other question, kind of related to that, is like one thing you could do to make like someone more successful as a roach roller. And one of the things I see that makes the biggest difference up here is the lures you use. You find some that work and some that don't. That's a perch bait. That's a really good lure up here. And of course, the Joe Bucher depth raider. If anybody has any of this pattern, I would email me and I will send you my address. And if you send me a bunch of these, I'll send you a free t-shirt.
He'll pay $100 a piece.
No, not quite. Maybe a t-shirt. And the old standby M9 Grandma, that head used to be a lot different color. That was red, and that's completely worn off. If you can find these, I'll send you a free Iceman VHS tape. And this is a new one by Storm, and I'm really looking forward to using this one this year. Now, it may work, it may not, but I like how it's wide across the back, and it's a little heavier duty, and it looks really nice. But those are a couple things. The lures and colors are very important in open water. I've seen it make more of a difference out there than anywhere else. And the times of year, early season, they seem to be up in the water column. So, that like June, early July is a really good time period. And then after dark in August too. But there's a lot more to it. I could probably talk for an hour on that. So I'm going to cut that off there. And did you have another one?
All right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Several of the other questions were about, cold, clear water, early season, and how do you deal with those conditions? Well, Jason was talking about the importance of lure color, and that's one of the key factors right off the bat. I always like using natural colors, especially early in the year. Once later in the year when you get your summer blooms, sometimes I'll fish with some chartreuse and fire tigers and all that. But especially whenever the water's clear, we always have our best success with natural colored baits. A couple other things that you want to do with clear water is making long casts. A lot of times can be important. One of the questions about for spooky fish, a lot of times you're making very long casts, you're sneaking into a spot and just making your one key cast. If you're coming into an area and you visualize, all right, this is where that muskie's going to be sitting. You don't come roaring in there right on the spot and just start fishing. You start from quite a ways out, you let your boat drift into the spot a lot of times with the wind, or just sneak in there with your trolling motor and just make long but precise casts and always be ready. Early in the year, like Jason was saying, the fish are a lot of times high in the water column. So a lot of times your bait hits the water, you have to engage your reel immediately. and immediately put action on your lure and be ready. Because a lot of times on that first pull, whether it's a Sewerk or a Bulldog, crankbait, whatever kind of bait you're using, on that first pull, those fish will see that bait hit the water, that first jerk, that's when they're going to react and strike that bait. One of the questions was about cold fronts. How do you fish a spot when it's a cold front? A lot of times all I do is I just slide out a little bit deeper. Let's say if the fish had been hanging out in like 5 to 7 feet of water, you know, up on the sand or gravel or some new weeds, all of a sudden a cold front comes. There's a break line out there where it goes from 12 feet down to 25 feet. A lot of times they'll be on that break line. And, you know, so basically I fish a lot of the same areas, but I just slide out a little bit. I guess you have something to add.
Yeah,
there.
one thing I was to add about the cold front, we've seen a lot of really large walleyes, muskies, pike caught on cold front days. So if you think the fishing's going to be bad, go to a lake that you think you've got a shot at a big fish, because you're probably only going to get a bite anyway. So you may as well go for a real tank. We've seen some real big fish come when a lot of guys wouldn't even go out because it looked like, you know, a garbage day.
Yep. Yeah, the tournaments too.
Yeah.
The same thing. A lot of times on the tournaments, we will definitely target spots that have bigger fish, and a lot of times that's what happens. You know, it'll be a tough day in the tournament, but you'll get one fish, you know, 42 incher, and hey, that's great.